Hi everyone. In these next 15 minutes, I'm going to try and share with you the content from chapter 9, which is on marketing research and how marketers use decision support systems. So in the first part of the chapter, you learn about the process of conducting marketing research and why data or collecting information is relevant to a marketing decision. So marketing research essentially, which is similar to any other research study, performs three roles. Descriptive, which is essentially collecting knowledge, information, and then presenting factual statements. Diagnostic, which is collecting information in order to try and make some explanations or inferences. And then the predictive role is where marketers collect information and analyze it in order to make forecasts or kind of project results of a planned decision. So a marketing research process is similar to any other research study, and as you can see, it starts with defining a problem and moves in that linear fashion with the last step, which is follow-up. So let's start with the first step, which is problem definition. So any research study begins with first determining what information is needed, and then how can that information be obtained. So for example, if a company is thinking about introducing a new product, the company needs to decide, well, in order to make this decision, what information do I need? And am I going to get that information from collecting primary data, which is first-hand data where you're collecting information that's directly relevant to the problem that you have defined for yourself, or secondary data, such as census data, for example, which has been collected for another purpose, but not the specific problem on hand. Step 2 then is research design, which is answering these questions. How will the data be collected? What research questions am I trying to answer? And then more importantly, how will the data be analyzed? So several ways in which marketers can collect information or data. Survey, and there are several different ways in which survey data can be collected. You should, I'm assuming that you guys all understand what survey research is, because I'm sure you've participated in some surveys in the near past. The other way in which marketers also collect information is observation research, which is where you're not asking anyone questions, but you're just a silent observer. And the most common method of doing that is mystery shoppers. So maybe some of you who work in the retail space understand what the role of a mystery shopper is. This is somebody who comes from a third party, who comes in, observes how the employees at a retail store interact with customers, and then provide their feedback to the retail store owner or the franchisee. So several different ways in which observation data can be collected. The third very common one is called experimental data, or collecting data through an experimental design. And the most common use of that is a taste test. Right? So, let's say Pepsi is trying to determine if people like Pepsi more than Coke. They bring in a sample of individuals, they give them a blind taste test, and then depending on the poll, depending on the feedback, then they can claim whether, out of the sample, do people like Pepsi or do they like Coke more. So that was three different ways in which marketers collect data. Step 3 in the market research process is to create a sample. And so again, if you've taken, since you've taken math, and some of you have taken the stat course, or just from before, you would understand that, as a researcher, you can't go and ask every single individual. So usually researchers will extract a sample or a subset from a larger population. So very common use of a sample is with the Nielsen TV ratings, and this is something that, as a consumer, you've come across, where big TV networks or broadcast companies will share this information about how The Big Bang Theory had 10.3 million viewership. And so all this information is actually being collected by this market research company called AC Nielsen that actually has a sample of 5,000 households, and depending on the viewership of that 5,000 household sample size, the company then shares that data, this finding, with the broadcast company, who then make inferences and make these projections about, what percent of the total population then viewed that particular show. Step 4 is to collect data, and that only applies when you're collecting primary data. Step 5 is to analyze the data, and again, a bunch of different statistical tools can be used to analyze data. Step 6 is to prepare and present the report. So if you're a consultant, then you prepare what you found from the data, you analyzed it, summary of major findings, and then based on those findings, you make conclusions and recommendations for your client. And then the last step, of course, in any research study is to follow up. Did you have enough information to make a decision? How differently can we analyze the data? What other recommendations would be necessary? So when should marketing research be conducted? Under these two conditions: when there is a high level of uncertainty, so the market is turbulent, competitive intensity is very high, there's just a high risk of making a decision devoid of any supportive data, or where the value of research exceeds the cost of generating the information. So two conditions under which a marketing research study should be conducted. The second part of the chapter kind of looks at this other product that companies have developed for themselves. It's called a DSS, or a decision support system. And this is a very computerized information system that managers keep on hand in order to mine the data to make decisions at times and to help learn more about their target market. So a very common practice of that is database marketing. So for example, if you purchased a product and you filled out the product warranty information, by doing so you become an entry, a data point in the company's larger database. Another example, let's say you shop at a grocery store and you signed up for the club card. Every time you make a purchase at that Acme or Giant, you give your club card to the cashier in order to get the sale price. But a second use of that scanning action is that the company is also collecting data on what are you purchasing, whether you're using coupons, and then uses what's called database marketing, kind of mine the data to see how can they customize coupons and offer you more incentives to repurchase at the same store. So that's all I had on this topic. It's a preview kind of a topic, and if this is something that interests you more, then we do offer a course in marketing research, and I'll encourage you to take a look at that in the future. Thank you for your attention.